Thank you for joining us today. My name is Samira Tilley, Product Marketing Manager at Assemble Systems, an Autodesk company. In today's webinar, we will look at how Clayco takes an integrated approach to successful project delivery.
So thanks, Samira, for the introductions. I'm Tim Kelly, Senior Product Manager, as Samira mentioned. I look after our quantification and estimation products and work with our Assemble team to make sure that guys like Tomislav and Liang can actually achieve these workflows and continue to better the product. My background is in construction, a degree from Texas A&M in construction management, and spent a number of years in both pre-construction as well as in the field managing VDC workflows, estimating and scheduling. Tomislav, why don't you go ahead and take over and introduce yourself?
Thank you, Tim, and thanks for having us here with Assemble today. Good afternoon and good morning to those that are tuned in into this webinar all the way from Hawaii. I do appreciate this. My name is Tomislav Žigo and I work as VP at Clayco, overseeing our virtual design and construction team, and also all the aspects of field technology integration and introduction of new construction technologies into our kind of day-to-day workflows. I started my career as a mechanical engineer, worked as a registered architect, and now have transitioned over past 13 years in the realm of design and build world, which was extremely gratifying. My passion lies in finding opportunities that can improve our processes and ultimately our contribution to built environment and ultimately to the society we live in. In my view, the learning process never stops, and what you're about to see and hear today is just a snippet of what we do at Clayco as part of our growth and hope for advancing our project delivery process. And with this, Liang, please.
Thank you, Tomislav. Thanks, Tim. Hi, everyone. My name is Liang Go. I work for Clayco VDC. I have been working in VDC about 5 years. I start work for Ventana, a curtain wall company, a division of Clayco, and then transferred to Clayco VDC to facilitate the pre-con estimating department to design the BIM workflow. And now I'm involved with the different kinds of VDC services at Clayco VDC. Thank you.
Awesome. And for those of you unfamiliar with Assemble and our workflow we support, Assemble is a cloud-based model data management system that allows, you can see a number of different workflows and different aspects of project management here on the screen. But ultimately, we allow your team members to incorporate project data through models and aggregate, organize, condition, analyze changes that occur through design iterations on into incorporating cost and schedule information and tracking things through the course of execution. Really easy system to get up and running with. These guys are going to show you some simplified workflows and dig into some more complicated data analysis. But ultimately, our key mission at Assemble is to break down and simplify access to BIM information and allow your entire team to leverage that data. Ultimately, we exist primarily in the construction space. Our customers are typically general contractors. And what we like to do is evaluate how we can take design content that comes from architects, engineers, condition that information, and make it valuable for the construction workflow, the construction team. So, and kind of in front of you, you see something that looks, an output from the design team. That's a good-looking rendering. Well, those good-looking renderings aren't quite so valuable as the ability to communicate a task at hand, or the way you need to break down pores, or the way you need to organize your construction team for various workflows. Over to you guys, Tomislav, and talk a bit about Clayco.
Thank you, Tim. So before we dive into kind of nuts and bolts of our Assemble implementation, I'd like to use this opportunity to kind of familiarize our audience with who Clayco is. And sometimes that's almost difficult to explain because we are very complex, but at the same time very streamlined organization that in its core is a real estate developer and design builder. We are comprised out of several entities whose purpose is to deliver projects as turnkey solutions throughout optimized processes. Basically, we go and do everything from finding the sites, providing financing, design and construction services, and ultimately handover. Founded in 1984, so we're almost 40-year-old company. We count more than 2,000 employees. Our past year revenue were a little bit north of $2.6 billion, and we have nationwide presence. One of the Clayco trademarks is our emphasis on quality and safety. They go hand to hand. And we are present in several, we have a strong presence in several markets, industrial, corporate, healthcare, and institutional. So let's talk about what does it mean to deliver projects in an integrated way. As I mentioned, we are all about complexity in terms of organizational structure. But it's also worth noting that the main axis of our design-build model is structured around three subsidiaries. Clayco Real Estate Group, or CRG, that helps select the sites, provide all the aspects of the development, financing, and asset management. Then our design group, LJC, Lamar Johnson Collaborative, that is providing a full range of architectural services from strategic planning, architecture, interiors, urban planning. And ultimately, Clayco, our operations, which is basically acting on design-build jobs. We all partner up as a one entity, but very often Clayco delivers jobs as a CM at risk. We also self-perform. And as I mentioned before, Clayco is very proud of their safety culture, or our safety culture, that is core of our business. The main drivers of our business work in concert with our also concrete self-performing group and our enclosure outfit, Ventana, while all of the aspects of quality control and structured project handover are delivered through the collaborative effort of our technical assurance group and virtual design and construction. This level of integration allows for a very streamlined communication process and healthy dose of internal competitiveness that strives to deliver excellence on every project we tackle. So in a nutshell, the question is, why are we doing this? The essence of our integration is optimizing not only the communication process, but also process of decision making. This optimization is reflected through our highly motivated effort to align our project delivery with clients' expectations and assure that every consecutive project we embark on starts with from a bit higher ground, which means the knowledge that has been accumulated on previous projects is readily put in our knowledge management system, and we kind of use this previously acquired knowledge, or people call them sometimes lessons learned, in order to basically improve on our internal processes. Over past several years, we went through the digital transformation process that is still underway, with the emphasis on data-centric model and easy access to information for all project stakeholders. This model, where we aspire to have a single source of truth, drives our projects and the enterprise is projects and the enterprise. And the same project is also facilitated through our enterprise-wide initiatives and strategic partnering with companies that we think can help us get to the point where we want to be sooner. And one of those companies is also Autodesk, where we are actively working, collaborating with them in improving our day-to-day workflows. And this is agenda for today's presentation. I wish I could be the one taking credit for all the whiz-bang stuff that Leon will share with you. But just we want to basically guide you through a gamut of activities where Assemble as a tool in our toolkit, in conjunction with other software that is pretty much essential for our project delivery, can guide you through pre-construction processes, integration of scheduling, workflow, bringing all those elements in the field, and ultimately utilizing this data-rich source for enterprise-wide reporting. And with this, Leon, the show is yours, so I'll mute myself and enjoy the presentation.
Thank you very much, Tomislav. So this is our agenda today. We're going to talk point by point and item by item based on this agenda. First section, we're going to be talking about adding values to the pre-construction workflows by Assemble. So as you could see here, I think as a BIM engineer or anyone working in the construction industry or design build world, we come across Revit and Navisworks a lot every day. And Assemble has a function to exporting the model geometries and model information from either Revit or Navisworks. We understand that we could already extract the quantities from Revit schedules. However, the Revit schedule is not designed for estimating, or it's not user-friendly for takeoffs. But Assemble takes advantage of this opportunity and make the visualization perfect for takeoff purpose. And Assemble is linked to Revit model through the Revit element ID, which is called source ID in Assemble. And in this section, we're going to use a concrete example by using the curtain wall takeoffs to illustrate how Assemble is user-friendly for takeoffs and estimating from the estimator's insider's view. So this is a concrete example. As you could see in Revit how the curtain walls are joined in Revit, it's basically a big piece of curtain wall system, and then the architect goes into it and divided the curtain panels and make it more in detail. However, when you're trying to exporting the Revit model from Revit into Navisworks, the curtain wall systems are not imported into Navisworks, and the reason is listed here. So under the walls categories in Navisworks, you are not able to find curtain wall. And here in Navisworks, any software using Navisworks as a base software to exporting the model from, you are not able to get the whole square feet of curtain wall, because the only information which is beneficial for us in Navisworks is the curtain panels area. If you're adding up other curtain panels area, it's obviously going to be less than the whole curtain wall system, because it's not counting the surface area of mullions. So you see here, when Navisworks is exported into third-party software, the curtain wall are not even showing up. However, when using Assemble, you could see it's basically an apple-to-apple transformation from Revit into Assemble, and all the curtain wall systems are listed here. So this feature was not available just 1 year ago, and Assemble keeps getting requests from us and work on it, and now it is perfectly showing the whole curtain wall area, basically the curtain wall system area, and that's the area, that's exactly the square feet the estimators want. One step further, when we're trying to compare the models, in the construction as a general contractor or design builder, there are a lot of situations, there are a lot of design iterations, and also we want to compare the model between design intention and the real fabrication model. Here we're talking about Assemble and BIM 360 glue. So what we're using Assemble here to compare the design iterations, because most of the time it is the same designer. They inherit their same element ID in Revit. So you could see here as a quantitative takeoff, which of the items are added, which of them are moved, which of them change, and you could export this quantities and external Excel sheet for estimating purpose. However, when you are trying to compare the design intention from the designers and compared to the real fabrication model from fabricators, we're using glue. The reason we're using glue here to compare for this benefits is because we use fabrication models for coordination Navisworks, and glue hosting all the fabrication models for Navisworks, and that's why we're comparing the fabrication model and design model in glue. So you can see what's the discrepancy here between the design intention and real fabrication model. And coming to our second section regarding the design build process. So design build is a very broad concept, but I'm just using a concrete example to illustrate what we have been using Assemble to facilitate this procedure for our design build. So for this small mini project, the final goal is to track the construction status of each room. Since it is a renovation project, some of the rooms are under demo, some of the rooms are installing new drywall, some of the rooms are installing new MEP, some are under painting. So now our goal here is to track the construction status of each room so that we know the impact on the budgets and future schedules. That's the goal of this mini project. And I'm going to talking about the old workflow and the new workflow here. So while we're doing this, tracking the construction status by using the old workflow, they didn't give us a nice angle of the room because room is basically in a transparent box in Revit. And this is the old workflow we have been using before assemble. You can see we're using docs, Revit, glue, by creating the equipment sets in glue and mapping to field, and field synchronize it back into Navisworks to see the overall view. And the whole thing is facilitated by the Dynamo script because we want to stand in the center of the room in the BIM 360 view. So that's why we're introducing the Dynamo script here. And you can see the old field, how we're changing the status of the construction status of the different rooms in BIM 360 field. So however, Assemble covers all this docs, Revit, all this workflow, which is facilitated by Dynamo into one single platform that is Assemble. And that's the deliverable from the old workflow. And you could see the new deliverable from Assemble, and this is how the old workflow looks like. The old field doesn't, when it points to the room, you don't know where you're standing because, as I said before, the transparent box of rooms, and after we assisting by the Dynamo, we know where we're standing. Assemble covers this, updated this workflow. It brings you right to the center of this room, and you know where you are standing, incorporating the barcode scanning function. On the left side is the old workflow overview. You can see this is Navisworks. All the status are listed here: planning, order, installing MAP, installing drywall, and Assemble could mimic all these functions exactly the same construction status on the right side. What Assemble is doing here, it saves a lot of energies, saves a lot of redundancies. Since we're talking about the BIM 360, Assemble took one step further into integrating into BIM 360 docs. Just a few months ago, you could see under document management, under BIM 360, Assemble integrated into issues and folders, these two modules, by snapshot and by object. But just be careful of the direction of the flow of the information, because it is one directional information flow from Assemble into BIM 360 docs now. And we are using this function, Assemble sync to BIM 360 docs. This function we upload in our scan result of this floor on 5th floor. You can see we linked this 5th floor room to the scanning result by using that function. So this PDF will be shown on BIM 362 after I upload it in Assemble and link to the Assemble object. And you could even create an issue in Assemble here at this corner. You could see the slope is 0.71%, which is out of our tolerance, and bring up this issue to our QA/QC team. And this issue is also reflected on BIM 360 docs after created in Assemble. Next section, we're talking about Assemble's integrating with P6 with the scheduling part. There are two different ways to input the data into Assemble scheduling mode. One is directly input into Assemble, either by the web version or Assemble app, or you could sync from P6 directly. And how to do that? By using the Assemble's scheduling integrator. So basically, you're dragging the activities from P6 into Assemble object, which is very similar to the Navisworks timeliner. And this is the deliverable. You can see here the videos here are playing. This is the planned start date, and this is the actual start date. And so why we're using this, why we're using Assemble app to do this 4D simulation, it is because very convenient and very quick turning. It is especially great for one small area in one discipline. You know, a lot of time the PMs wants to simulate or the forecast the different possible outcomes by sequencing the different activities. So it's a very great quick turning for the small scale simulation than Navisworks. That's a benefit showing here. You could even put this activity ID or activity name from P6, or you could also optimize them, assemble, and then synchronize it back into Power BI. This is a visual in Power BI and a calendar. You could put these calendars in the Power BI and you could rename this in P6 or assemble. And we're going to talk about Power BI more in the next couple sections. Powering construction workflows. So we're talking about the design build process, and now we're going to narrow down into the construction workflows. And in order to talk about the benefits of using Symbol for the construction workflows, here we're using a specific example of tracking the installation status. At the beginning of this conversation, when I was talking about the design build process, we were tracking the rooms, which is a relatively like a container for different objects, for the drywalls, for the MEP equipment. The difference here, when we narrow down to the construction workflows, we're tracking a specific object, like an object with an element ID from Revit. That's the difference here. And now we're going to come into more detail how we're tracking the installation status by using Assemble. Basically, here in the railroad, when on the construction site, the problems we have met is that there are two different kinds of tracking methodologies here. The first one is 2 levels, and the second one is 4 levels. When we're tracking 2 levels means for a specific object, it is either installed or not. Basically, yes or no. It is a binary. And for 4 levels, it is just a representation for multi-level, which means when we're doing the commissioning on the construction site, especially for the big industrial project, there are different levels of commissioning, level 1, level 2, level 3, to level 4, to level 10. So here we're only using level 4 as an example to illustrate the workflow. First of all, let's look at the 4 levels installation tracking workflow. So the owner's software, the owner's own software to track the equipment, it is a flat 2D software. Basically, it is not a BIM software. So it is not great for visualization. So in order to reach the visualization here, that is also the goal. I'm presenting this slide that by using Symbol, we could help to visualize all the equipment tracking result. So we're exporting the data from the owner's software, importing into Excel sheet, and Excel importing into Assemble, and doing some customization of the Assemble columns. And Assemble, there are 2 different ways here you could use Assemble. You could either directly using the construction status result from the owner's 2D software, import it into Assemble, or you could input this data into Assemble directly. Basically, Assemble could be a data collector too. And some of the manipulation of the columns here, Assemble actually, here the Excel sheet, you could also import it into the Dynamo. So my understanding here, Assemble is basically in the Dynamo function. However, Assemble saves all the energy for you to do the scripting, do all the nodes in Dynamo, make it ready and easy for you to use. So after the data is ready in Assemble, you synchronize it back into Revit, and you could create a nicely laid out block in Revit and generate a 2D colorized, colored, coded report for the equipment track. So here you could see the result. One of the deliverable here was talking about you could set up the title block in Revit, and here is a place in Symbol. You set up this parameter installation status here, where you input the level 1, level 2, level 3 to level 10, and inputting here and synchronize it back to Revit and create this 2D color coded report. It is great. So this actually brings up more future opportunities if here in this stage, if Assemble could actually have a function for the reporting page, and it could save us some of the energy to synchronize back into Revit to generate this report. Here is the 2 levels reporting we're talking about, basically yes or no. For this project, you can see for the curtain wall tracking, the curtain wall panels tracking, for each panel, we want to know yes or no. Basically here, installed or not installed. This is how it looks like in Symbol when you're tracking.
So really quick before we do dive into the next section, I kind of want to just point out or really ask you, you have different needs for different visuals, different representations, and different ways you're tracking it. I think from my perspective, I see the value there in Assemble being that flexibility. Can you better articulate the why? Like, you have a lot of different ways you're representing it, and you mentioned different consumers. Can you hit a little bit more on why you see value in being able to do it differently here?
Yes. So I understand what you said, but I think from my perspective, I think the biggest advantage is that currently most of the models are modeled in Revit, and Assemble have such a close relationship with Revit. It is so easy to sync from Revit and sync it back into Revit, and it depends on flexibility and adaptability. And you could create parameters in Assemble. It's very easy to create parameters in Assemble and very easy to synchronize it back into Revit, the original designing software. So I think that's the roots of the problem, because of close relationship with Revit. Because under the big umbrella, it's very easy to use.
Well, Tim, if I can also chime in slightly here, there's an inherent flexibility because of this kind of close alignment between Assemble and design authoring software. But I think the crux of the ability to do different visual representations really yields toward everybody on a project having this kind of aha moment when they see something in a very concise way being depicted, as and understanding kind of overall picture of a project is at any given state. So all of that capability is really geared toward accelerating this communication process and taking any ambiguity out of the process, because it's all data driven. So to me, that's the most gratifying part of the ability that we have.
Yeah, absolutely. Putting it in the right context, giving the visuals that they can understand, and that remove ambiguity, because they're speaking the same language, so to speak. Yeah. Awesome.
Should I continue?
Absolutely.
Sure. Thanks for the question, Tim. In the next part, we're going to talk about bringing it all together in Power BI, how we're integrating all the different platforms into one platform from the data perspective. So here, this is the data sheet for that 4-level commissioning I was just talking about. And that 2D colorized reporting page is just one form of reporting. And this is a different kind of reporting. This is the data sheet in Power BI using exactly the same data from Assemble. So on this slide, I'd like to focus on two things. One thing is about the zone. The other thing is about conditional formatting, basically the different colors here. So for the zones, the reason we're using zones here, because a construction project, for a big construction project, we also have different zones, colors, locations, floors, phases. That's why a lot of the times in real construction projects, we need to divide the locations by zones or by rooms, by locations. So, and the second part is about the conditional formatting. As Thomas was just talking about, the final goal is to make everything concise for the construction professional to use on the construction site. They like everything as simple as possible. So they like to represent everything by color, no matter from the estimators or the construction managers. So it's better to represent it by color, which is represented here. However, there is a limitation in Power BI that there is no way you could do conditional formatting in bar charts for multi-level commissioning. So that's why I'm using the table in Power BI. So you are using if statement in DAX or M language in Power BI to satisfy this conditional formatting in Power BI. We're going to continue talking about the zones in the next couple of slides. And before I move on, I'd like to mention that because of the limitation of Power BI, we're introducing Python script here to make it realistic by using the bar charts for conditional formatting. Because imagine when you're doing multi-level commissioning from level 1 to level 10, we want to have 10 different colors. It's very troublesome to do that in Power BI stuff in the table conditional formatting. That's why we're introducing the Python script here. And the benefit you can see here, it is more straightforward. And if you look close into that, the data here between the bar charts and the table is exactly the same. That's why we're using Python scripts here. This slide is a 2 levels data sheet. You could see for this fancy geometry curtain wall project, the green means installed and the orange means not installed yet. And we divided by different levels. You could track the construction status of the installation of these curtain panels by levels or by facades. And you could see here, we did accumulation of the installation of the glass panels because we want to know which day it is reaching the maximum and on which day we're going to finish installing these glass panels. However, as you can see, here's a bump here in this accumulation line, because it doesn't make any sense because there's no day the installers would take off any glass panels which they've already installed. So we went back into Assemble where they're inputting the data. We set up 2 parameters in Assemble. One's called VDC status, where you indicate yes or no, installed or not, and the next line is about installation date. So basically, after it is installed, you need to record when it is installed. So the problem here, why it is happening, the bump here, is because we noticed that the construction professionals on the construction side, they randomly pick up object in Assemble accidentally and throw in an installation date where actually it is not installed yet. So based on these accidents we found in Assemble, we have such opportunities we think Assemble could explore in future. The first thing is the auditing data, which means Assemble could expose the auditing data in future. In future, we just have one line called VDC install, VDC status installed. So once the superintendent changes the status to installed, the installation date going to be audited automatically. The second thing is about the conditional inputting. So basically, these 2 items are by conditional relationship. You cannot input installation date without indicating the installation status installed, or on the other way, you cannot put indicate the installation date to installed unless you have an installation date following afterwards. The third thing is about height properties. Come back to the principle of concise. The construction professionals want everything be as concise as possible, as simple as possible. So the future opportunity is to hide some of the properties within Assemble or hide some of the properties imported from Revit. So those are the future opportunities we could think about. And this accumulation really, you see that these are the accumulation, the forecasting data in Power BI. It's really great for future forecasting, either for schedule purpose or budgeting purpose. And this data, sorry.
I'm gonna jump in really quick and just say, as you go through this content and talk about data-driven analysis and talk about how you're looking at forecasting, and you mentioned different ways to do it, and you've created a Python script and this and that. And I'm just giving kind of my own anecdotal point of reference. I know from my time working with construction teams in the field, we did kind of a similar process to pull things together in a macro-driven Excel workbook and just collecting a lot of data. And from my standpoint, if I kind of distill down what you're going through, it's this data-driven approach. Construction projects can be quite complicated. There's a lot happening in any given day. There's a lot happening as you stretch that out over the course of a month or multiple months. And so kind of what I'm hearing you say again and again and again is your teams love to have access to this data. And all of this preparation work is about giving them the right information when that conversation is happening and that discussion about a particular component is going on. Any more you like to add there about leveraging that data and actually using the output? I know you're getting into that in this forecasting piece here.
But Tim, it's also provides ability to any team. Every construction company has a range of ways of monitoring the productivity and what's going on the construction site. And I think
absolutely.
Yeah, and we are going through a process where, we feel like kind of kids in a candy store. You have all these new applications in a data-rich environment, but going through the process and validating which application gives you the best or most reliable result is something that Clayco is now going extensively through the process. And having just another tool in your toolkit that can help you validate what other tools are delivering, or trying to understand which tool is best for a given application and a given project type, is what the beauty of this process is. We are discovering. This is not given. There's no absolute truth which application does the best job, but having applications like, let's say, I'm not going to name them now, but like this one, really allows us to instill the confidence in our field teams that tools that are given to them at their disposal are the tools that are giving the right results.
Absolutely. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, in my opinion. It's adding another lens. This doesn't replace analysis of cash flow on a job. This doesn't change the things that you should be doing. It's adding an additional lens to give that clarity, to reduce the risk, to give the understanding to the team. Liang, you can go ahead and continue on. Sorry to
Thanks for the question.
Flow there.
No problem.
Sure.
So we're talking about, this is the Power BI, and this is Excel sheet. All this data are imported from Assemble, and this is Power BI's forecasting. You can see the confidence interval, and here this is a forecasting in Excel sheet, and it looks like a linear regression, but it's not really a linear regression. And based on this forecasting, you can see the finished installation of these glass curtain panels is March 11th, 2020. This is a very basic forecasting. This is also like some future opportunities are lying here. Next section, we're going to talking about the BIM trace coordination, how Assemble is facilitating this coordination process. It's kind of an extension of Assemble's function. So we're going to talking about how Assemble is going to facilitate the coordination to back down by the Navisworks. There are two different methods. First method is by the zones, and the second method is by the element ID. And we're talking about this map in the previous slide in Power BI. So this map is imported from Revit into Visio into Revit. This map contains the XYZ information, basically the geolocation information from Revit itself. And the first method, you could draw the simple zones in Inkscape and import it into Power BI, or you could have the 3D model imported into Power BI web service. So these are the three different ways to do that. Here in Power BI on the back end, you could see the zone and area in Assemble defined. And you could also see the project zone name defined in Navisworks. So by linking these zones between these two platforms in Power BI, you could see this is the result, the datasheet result in Power BI. This is the map we're talking about. This map contains both platforms, Assemble and Navisworks. So a lot of conclusions could be taken from this one single data sheet, and this is example on the bottom I give. So for example, as I click on this area, if the installation status already shown everything is installed, and however, there are still active issues lying in Navisworks, which means the installation on site is not really strictly following our BIM coordination. So you could get different kinds of conclusions from this one single data sheet by linking the zones together between these two different platforms. And the second way we're doing this is by linking the element ID. Why we're doing this? Because this is a real example when we're doing the BIM coordination. As you can see on the left side, this is a clash. It's also an issue, which is a very typical image in Navisworks. And these two objects between two different trades are clashing each other. And during coordination, someone is asking the question, they want to know the cost impact of this object. And if it's a renovation project, they want to know if they have already been installed, their current status. So we want to know the detailed information of each of the items, like the scheduling information, the real installed information, the pre-con information. You could add all different kind of other dimensions. All these dimensions are on the right side are covered by assemble here. So the goal here, in order to achieve this, we need to link the issue ID or basically the clash with the element ID here. So, and this is the workflow to link the issue ID and element ID. You could either input the data directly into Power Apps or scanning the element ID using the barcode and the data saved on our SQL server. Basically, it's a one-to-one relationship, the issue ID and the element ID, and the visualization is satisfied in Power BI. This is what I was talking about in SQL Server. You can see here the issue ID is apple to apple to the issue ID on our server, and the source ID, basically the element ID is apple to apple to our element ID on our server. And this is one of the deliverable you could see here. On the left side is all the issue ID from Navisworks, and on the right side are the associated element ID in Assemble. So for one single issue ID for the issue 776, you can see all the elements, which are the elements are involved in these clashes. And this table could be keep extending to the right side. You could get all the scheduling information, pre-con information, cost information, scheduling information. So this is an extension of Assemble's function. It's great for, it's very flexible and adaptable for Assemble, to provide these flexibilities for us to manipulate, to extend its functions, to utilize in our typical construction or BIM workflow. The results, I'm going to give this section to Thomas Love to talk about.
Thank you, Liang. Well, kind of to define the bottom line, obviously part of the presentation was to show real existing workflows, and the other one was to maybe enlighten on opportunities that one can have once when you start combining different applications that are utilizing the same data source, or maybe finding bridging components between different data source, which it's not uncommon to have on jobs today. But if we need to boil it down, what does it mean what does this mean for us as organization? We have noticed some really significant improvements through utilization of Assemble with our takeoff process, and in that regard also in a highly cyclical design build environment where you go through many iterations of proposed design and you're bouncing back and forth between pre-con, preparing variance report on amount of content that is being added to a model or ultimately construction document is amazingly easy through this platform. We are not talking about the flashy reports. We are just talking about Excel spreadsheets that are spitting out data, and then this is where this ability to connect that report with some tool that can visualize comes into play. The other thing is tracking, installation process, comparing this to pay applications and just being on top of it. It's the time to do this has been greatly reduced, and on a couple of jobs that we were closely scrutinized, just ability to track what's been done in a field, optimize this against proposed schedules, and eliminating I don't call them unnecessary, but established steps in understanding who needs to be notified, where and how decisions are being made in order to approve certain changes, resulted in almost over $100,000 in savings just in time being used on the project. And ultimately, if we are doing this, if we are looking this at the prism of intangible results, decision-making process is greatly accelerated. People can easily agree and collaboration can be facilitated much easier when they have a clear understanding what they're looking at. Schedules can be updated. The look-aheads have real tangible numbers to be measured against, especially if this is being diligently implemented in the field. And I mentioned pay application process and coordination tracking. So all in all, I think deploying Assemble or any other tool that has a similar capability in our day-to-day workflow with a little bit of creativity and inquisitiveness can yield toward really interesting results. Now, Clayco's job now is to really replicate this, what we've been working on over past year or so, over as many projects as possible, and really spend next year or so accumulating either positive or negative results and getting a better understanding how this data-centric, data-rich process can improve what we do. And with this, Tim, you have any closing words?
I think you hit both. It's listed there, but tangible and intangible. I think it's often really difficult to put a value on that feeling that you're giving the project team or the executive team about a project when you're leveraging that data. I know from my own personal experience, there's value in having that gut feeling of where you are, and there's value in having this data-driven approach. And that gut feeling often, once you start to bring in the data to back that up or to ask questions or poke holes in it, it gives that back and forth. It gives that tug of war between I've got 30 years of experience and I know this is where we're going to go, but you can certainly take that data and poke holes in that, and vice versa. And so again, having this additional lens is invaluable. It ultimately is something that you guys have run through a lot of different scenarios and a lot of different things that you're doing to try and improve the process across the board. I'd encourage those that are on the call that if you're looking at this thing, this is a whole lot to pick up. There are bits and pieces of this that add value in their own way, and that ultimately can improve an individual, some process in pre-construction or some process in, a mobilization or, through the course of tracking. There's definitely ways to put this on a smaller scale project or a smaller scale BDC team and get that value. So with that said, I just want to extend a thank you to you guys, to Clayco, to Tomislav, and Lang for sharing your workflow, for your results. And, as you said, take this and move it on to the next project. Well, I can certainly hope that folks listening on the call today can take this and, take parts of it and look at ways that they can incorporate that into their workflows as well.